Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about different types of gas furnaces and some tips. We'd like to thank Ashley Murphy for liking and sharing the podcast. Prior to 1885, most homes in the U.S. were heated still with wood-burning fireplaces. And it wasn't until around 1895 Dave Lennox built the first steel-riveted coal furnace in Iowa. And it didn't have a fan, so it didn't push the air through ducts. Actually, heat just rose through natural convection, which is a slow process. It wasn't until 1935 where the first forced air furnaces were developed, and that allowed the warm air to be pushed through the rest of the house.
So much faster?
Much better. For this episode, we're going to focus on types of gas furnaces and some tips. The gas furnaces are the most common in the U.S., and they're usually called forced air. They have an air filter that needs to be cleaned or replaced regularly, and a well-maintained furnace should last around 25 years. Traditional furnaces, or the older furnaces, vent the gas from combustion fast and hot up and out through a flue, and these are not very efficient. The more efficient furnaces are called condensing furnaces.
What does that mean?
So these newer furnaces actually condense water out of the gas. So they're using a dual heat exchanger. The burners are in this first heat exchanger, and rather than an old system where it just gets hot and then the gas immediately goes up and out of the duct, the gases travel to a second heat exchanger, so you're grabbing more heat, and that's where the water just falls out of it.
Are you going to explain what a heat exchanger is?
So this is kind of cool. It's like a chamber, so it's either a group of tubes or a group of chambers that surround the burner. As the burners go off, they absorb this heat on the outside of this heat exchanger, and then those gases are vented up and out through the ductwork. So it's taking all these dangerous fumes outside, and then when your fan or your blower goes on, it's actually moving air around the outside of this heat exchanger, and it's picking up that heat, and that's what's sending heat through your ductwork. The modern heat exchangers have either really wavy shapes or dimpled surfaces, and this is slowing down the air so that the air is grabbing more of the heat as it moves around this.
Oh, interesting.
So that heat exchanger is kind of the key safety in your furnace. If you get a crack in that, that's how carbon monoxide gets into the house. So in the older furnaces, you would have a pro check the furnace at least once a year, and that was pretty standard. So they'd come in, they would check the heat exchanger for cracks. They'd pull out the burners, they'd clean them, they'd change the thermocouple. If you had a blower that needed to be oiled, they would pull that out, they'd vacuum it out, they'd add oil to it. If you have a model with a belt, they'd check the belt. If it has some cracks in it, they would change that. And then the limit switch, and this is what turns on and off the blower at specific temperatures. They would test that, and then they would change that. And that a lot of these parts would go bad every few years, and so this yearly maintenance was, just nice to do. But with modern furnaces, they're run with these circuit boards. Most of them have all types of self-diagnostics. The burners in these high-efficiency furnaces, a lot of them are in sealed combustion chambers, so they just don't get dirty. It takes years to get dirty. So many of the pros are saying that with a new high-efficiency furnace, if you had it inspected once every 2 to 3 years, it's probably a good habit. But you really need to check the manual for whatever furnace you have, because some of them, the manufacturer, to keep the warranty from being voided, they require that you have it inspected once a year.
Oh, really?
So it's important that you look at your warranty, especially if you just bought a new furnace.
So if you have a gas furnace, this is why it's important to have a CO detector?
Yeah, absolutely. So you should have one on every level of the home. And then, like we talked about in our carbon monoxide episode,
Yippee.
You should replace it once every 7 years and vacuum it monthly.
If you're going to be purchasing a new furnace, what are some things you should be thinking about?
So the U.S. Department of Energy isn't coming out with their new standards till the spring of 2016.
Ooh, exciting.
But so we have that to look forward to. So the old furnaces, they were around 56% to 70% efficient. And the new standard right now is the minimum efficiency is 80%. So you can purchase a standard or mid-efficiency furnace. It's going to be from 80 to 83% efficient, and their acronym is the AFUE, and this is for the Annual Fuel Utilization Efficiency. And this is a measurement of how much fuel is converted into heat. Right now, 80% is the minimum efficiency for a furnace.
Wow, that's a huge jump from like 56 to 83.
Yeah, amazing, huh? Out of 80% of the energy that's being burned, or 80% of that money you're spending,
Yeah.
20% is going up the flue. So high efficiency is 90 to 98% AFUE, which is amazing. 98% of that energy burned is being utilized, which is pretty cool. If you get an Energy Star model, they're rated at 90% and above, and these are condensing furnaces with dual heat exchangers, and most of these are going to have a sealed combustion chamber.
High efficiency furnaces are going to cost more initially,
Right.
but you're going to make up that money in the long run.
Right, on your fuel costs. And then with these furnaces, you have different types. So you have a single stage furnace. So this has one fan speed, and it also has one burner output. So it's full on. When it calls for heat, the burner is completely on, and the fan is high. These are usually the least efficient and the loudest of the models, but they cost the least. With a two-stage furnace, you have two fan speeds and burner outputs. So depending on what your heat is calling for, it's not going to open the gas valve as much. So you can have a lower flame, and the fan's going to run longer, so it gets a more uniform heat. So it's a little more efficient. It's also going to be less noisy than a one-speed or a single-stage furnace. Then you have two-stage variable, and the burner and the fan speed varies based on the heat needed, and these are the most recommended for 2- and 3-story homes, the two-stage variable. And then they have a 3-stage variable, and this is considered the maximum inefficiency for 2- and 3-story homes. And then the top of the line for the best efficiency is the modulating variable speed. And they say that the temperature will never vary in your house more than 1 or 2 degrees.
What are some top-rated companies?
So all these companies were rated very high, and they all come with single or multi-stage burners and fans. American Standard was rated very high, and their average furnace runs around $3,000. Bryant, that's Bryant, their average furnace runs around $2,300. Carrier, Carrier, their average is around $2,800. Lennox, Lennox, so they've been around forever.
Since the start of furnaces.
And still one of the top-rated furnaces. Their average furnace is around $2,500. Rheem, and that's RHEEM. Their average is around $2,300, and Trane, Trane, and their average price is around $3,000.
Do you have any tips?
So I'd say at the beginning of the heating season, make sure that the switch to the furnace is on. Turn your thermostat to heat. Some people, they wonder why the heat's not working.
Do you ever turn your furnace off?
No, I never do. But, people can, or, if you have it in the laundry room or somewhere, the switch can get bumped if you have kids in the house. So, just a matter of course, I would say at the beginning of the year, if you make sure that the switch is on, your thermostat is changed over to heat. I would always change the battery once every year or two so that, the thermostat's working properly. And then make sure you're checking the furnace filter. Dirty filters can cause a bunch of problems. So they're restricting airflow, they're increasing fuel consumption. A restricted airflow because of a dirty furnace filter can actually overheat that heat exchanger and crack it. So it's amazing. Just the air moving over the heat exchanger is what keeps it cool,
right.
And that's what moves the heat. So it can shorten the life, cause a crack. On more efficient furnaces, that increase in heat or loss of airflow is going to trigger the furnace to shut down. So on some models, if the reduced airflow or the heat turns off the furnace a specific amount of times, and a lot of the manufacturers set it for 4 times. So let's say you have a dirty filter, it shuts down your furnace, it does that 4 times, now you're locked out. You you have to call a pro in to reset the computer.
Just from not changing your furnace filter.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, crazy. The average manufacturer recommends a Merv furnace filter of anywhere from 7 to 13. These are the highest recommended. And your Merv, this is the an acronym for Minimum Efficiency Reporting Value. And they started this in 1987. And you know who started it? The American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers.
Ah.
Those guys.
Or you could just listen to our furnace filter episode.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. So I was reading some of the new information on Merv 7 to 13 filters, and they're saying what's great about this is they restrict pollen, dust, cockroach waste, Legionella, lead dust, bacteria, pet dander, mold spores, cooking oil, smoke, dust mites, and they listed pudding mix.
Wow.
As one of the things that filters out of the air for you.
Pudding mix. Who knew that was a big problem? I forgot. How high does the Merv scale go? Does it start at 0?
It goes to 20 now.
Oh.
So it used to, there used to be a couple different lower, and now they go to 20. And some of the manufacturers with these newer high efficiency blowers and fans, if you get anything over a Merv 13, it's restricting the airflow so that you're not getting good airflow to the rest of the house just for air movement. But again, the critical thing is overheating that heat exchanger. If you have an older furnace with a pilot light, so this is a constant flame, you want to check it to see if it's lit.
Why is it called a pilot light?
So the American colonists always kept a little candle with this, they called it a pilot flame going, and so they always had a ready source. Since they didn't have like the cool matches and lighters available, they always had a candle with this little pilot ready to light the stove or light a fireplace. So a strong downdraft can sometimes blow out this standing light, this standing pilot. So to relight this on an older furnace, you're going to turn your gas control knob to pilot. You're going to press down on the button. Usually it's a red button that you press down. So you turn it to pilot, you press down this red button, and you're in the older furnaces, you're probably going to need a long match. So those fireplace matches are really nice for this. And you're going to light the pilot. Once it lights, sometimes you have to wait. If there's air in the tube, you might have to hold it down for 15, 20 seconds. Once that lights, you're going to keep holding down that button for 15, 20 seconds. You want to warm up the thermocouple in your older furnaces. After 20 or 30 seconds, you release that. It should stay on. Now you're going to turn it to on, and then when you turn up your heat, it's going to ignite. If you keep trying to light this and it keeps going out, you have a bad thermocouple, and then all you have to do is pull out the old thermocouple. For most of these, you can get any length, because usually you're going to have that excess rolled up, so I would go long, and then slide it into the bracket. That thermocouple needs to be touching the flame, so make sure you push it all the way up into the bracket. Most of them are held in by just a little compression fitting. Some are held by a screw, so it's going to be either or. Once you get it up in there, light it. Again, the flame has to be touching the top quarter or a third, and once that warms up, that's your safety.
You should make the end of that a different color.
Why? Like
so
glow?
You know, oh, no, so you just know how much you should have it in the flame.
Smart. Yeah, I like it. Oh, great idea. Too bad all furnaces are going away from it, and all water heaters, too. Boy, 30 years ago, we'd have been rich.
There you go. Is that the most common problem? The thermocouple going bad?
With those older furnaces, yeah. And it's interesting. The thermocouple is a bimetal, so it's 2 pieces of metal pressed together, and when that flame is on it, it creates like 75 millivolts of electricity, and that's what's telling the gas control that the flame is on. So, they don't want the burner going on and there's no flame to ignite it, so all this gas would just be filling your house. So that's your safety. If the pilot ever goes out, it shuts down the gas control. And that you probably have to change it every, 5 years, 7 years.
So when you change your CO detector?
Change your thermocouple. Another thing, if you have an older furnace and you have a noisy motor or there's no air moving, you probably have a broken belt, and these go bad. Again, these might last a little longer, but they do go. They start to crack and wear out. I would also have a spare belt, and you want to check the number stamped on the belt and get an exact match. You want that tight. And to replace this, you're just going to open the door on the front of the furnace to get access to the blower, and then with the new belt, you can usually slip it onto the small pulley on the motor very easily, and then you're slowly going to work this belt up and over the top of the pulley on the blower itself, and as you rotate that, it rotates the blower, and then should snap in place. And it should be a snug fit. If it's not, there's going to be an adjustment. There's going to be a motor mount that you can adjust to snug that up. And then in some of the older fans, they may need, or the older blowers, they may need oiling, so I would check my manual. In a newer furnace, if the air isn't moving, it could be the capacitor. So we did this at your cousin's house. We did a nice video on our YouTube channel. You're going to remove the lower cover and expose the blower, and then there's going to be a switch on the door that turns on and off the furnace when that cover's removed. You're going to turn the thermostat fan to on, so it's constantly running. And then once you have the door off, you're going to turn it to on. You're going to depress that switch with your hand. And then if you hear the blower humming, but it's not moving, you can reach inside and give it a push, and it should start moving and keep turning. And if it keeps turning, you need a new capacitor. And this is pretty common. So to replace it, you're going to turn off the switch to the furnace, and you're going to remove these lead wires from the capacitor. And this is going to be mounted right on the blower in most cases. And it's kind of a round, cylindrical shaped device. And never touch the contacts because you can get a severe shock. So this stores up energy, and then when the blower is called on to start, it gives this burst of energy. So it gets the blower moving, and then the electricity takes over.
So handle with care?
Yeah, well, what I would do is I would get an insulated screwdriver, and then I would touch. So as I pull the two leads off, I would take an insulated screwdriver and touch the two terminals together with the screwdriver, and that's going to discharge the electric that's built up in it, and then remove the capacitor. You want to match it up, so you want to get the exact same specs because the size...
This will all be in your model or your manual?
Yes, or, on it too. It's going to be marked. And then the size can be different as long as the specifications are the same. Then you're just going to connect the wires back. You're going to turn on the power. You're going to depress the switch on the door, and it should start moving for you.
Which this was a nice fix because it was, $20 to fix this?
Yeah, nothing to it. Easy do-it-yourself project. If you have a newer furnace without a standing pilot light, you're going to have a flame sensor. And a great routine to have once a year is cleaning that flame sensor. And if you have this problem, so let's say you have a furnace that's short cycling, your flames go on, and then after a few seconds they turn off, then they turn back on, and then they turn off. You're just not building up enough heat, so your house isn't getting warm, and it cycles too quickly. It's usually a buildup on the flame sensor. So all you have to do is turn off the furnace, remove the flame sensor, and
what does this look like?
So it's a long rod, almost looks like a thermocouple. Some might have a 45-degree angle, or some might have a 90-degree angle at the tip of this. But it's a small rod that sits into the flame, and again, it's a safety that's telling the gas control that there is a flame, so that the gas isn't escaping into your house. So what you're going to do is just clean this off with any mild abrasive. So you can even use a clean dollar bill and just really rub it. And it may not look like there's anything on it, but the thin film builds up from combustion, and so it doesn't sense properly. And just by cleaning this once a year, you're going to add years of life to this.
So you could also use sandpaper or an emery cloth?
True, yeah, very fine sandpaper, and don't be too aggressive because you can damage it, but you need something abrasive. If you're using sandpaper or an emery cloth, I would use a dry rag and wipe off any particles. Don't touch it with your fingers because you don't want to get oil on it. Put it back in and turn it on, and it should solve your problem. So very simple to do and a great routine.
Do the flame sensors go bad?
Yes, after a few years they go bad. So
and hardware stores generally don't carry them, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of hardware stores that are going to carry a variety. So we found, for a lot of our projects, either White Rogers, they make the thermostats, they carry a wide variety, and also Granger. So that's two places that a homeowner could get it themselves. I would have a backup flame sensor and a backup igniter for my furnace and just have them handy. And these are two of the few things that a homeowner can replace on these high-efficiency furnaces because these fail the most, and the rest of the furnace is so complex it generally needs an expert to repair or diagnose the problem.
Right.
The one other thing you can do as far as a routine is cleaning the tube that comes from the pressure switch. So on these condensing furnaces, it's extracting this water from the exhaust gases. It builds up over time. Minerals and mold and just particles build up in this little tube. So a lot of manufacturers recommend flushing this once a year, and you can use warm vinegar or a mild bleach solution or even canned air. You pull this hose off the pressure switch and then just clean it. And if you do that once a year, because once that gets filled up, then your furnace isn't going to work.
That's a bummer. Do you have anything else to add?
I would say if you're shopping for a new furnace, I would look at the high efficiency furnaces. I think they're probably well worth the money in the long run. If you have a 2 or 3 story house, I would look at the 2 or 3 stage variable furnaces. Check your furnace filter every month, especially with these new high efficiency furnaces. Clean your flame sensor once a year. Keep your manual.
You should also read your manual.
Some great reading.
Well, a lot of this stuff will avoid your warranty.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's smart to see what they want for your specific model. And then I would have a pro get out and check your heat exchanger at least once every couple of years.
Let's wrap this up.
You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement.
And you can subscribe to that as well.
You can download our book, Home Improvement Solutions, What Every Homeowner Should Know, on Amazon.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a 5-star rating and review.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.